Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the HSE Network podcast. This week, we're joined by Andy Barker of Speaking In. This is a really great discussion. You know, we touch on safety differently, of course, as mentioned in the title. But we also look at Andy's maybe personal life, you know, his experiences in health and safety and his wider values. You know, it's funny, I first met Andy at a conference last year before COVID. And he'll be the first to say he's a storyteller and he's got some great stories to tell. But one thing that is really apparent when you first meet Andy is just how passionate he is about health and safety, about keeping people safe on that shop floor. He's definitely in it for the right reasons, and yeah, this is a great discussion. I think you're going to enjoy this one. So Andy, I mean, you've got extensive experience in the health and safety field. And you mentioned on your LinkedIn profile that you know what works and what doesn't. Can you maybe give us an insight into what you don't think works in health and safety?
If you can think about an individual that no matter what it is that they ask you to do, you'll do it for them, right? And then you think of an individual that no matter what it is that they ask you to do for you, you will try and avoid doing it for them, right? And when you explore the reason why, what you often get to is, well, that person helped me. That person, as a professional, individual, whatever aspect it is, that person helped me. So what you've got to examine as a safety professional is, what do I do? What are the services that I provide that actually help people? So if you look at the way that you do an audit, for example, we're all very familiar with audits. Everybody knows that we need them, but who are you helping? So, for example, when I go down and talk to people, I don't know what their life's like. I don't know what it's like to work here. I'm just seeing them in the moment. And we've got a choice. I can look at you and use this audit to say, what are you complying with or not complying with? And that generates an output. Or I can say, what have you been given here that helps you do your job? And what are you struggling with? Because I'm going to use this exercise to listen to you, because I've been given a powerful position, right? And I don't mean that by job title, I just mean it by function. I've been given a powerful position. If I can listen to what it's like to be you and find out what you don't have, then I can take that information away and I can get you help, right? So I think, first and foremost, if you help people, they tend to talk to you, right? And it's the basis of a relationship, and you have to give something to get something out of people, right? So I think at my core, it's who I am, it's what I believe in. I believe that working out how to be personally helpful, professionally helpful, and provide services that are helpful, not mistake hunting. Regardless of what you think, people will tell you, yeah. Of course, I understand that you've got to find out these compliance issues because you've got that corporate purpose and so on and so forth. But if people feel that you are genuinely helpful, then you get more and more engagement, buy-in, and you help each other out, right?
Absolutely. I suppose it's kind of just about positioning yourself as a partner maybe within the organization, so that you're not just the senior health and safety person that comes around and everyone's got to be careful of tread eggshells around once a week. That you're someone that can really help drive change at the employee level and really help them maybe advance their careers on an individual level.
There's lots of individual elements to what you just said there, and when you talk about individuals and helping them in the career, right? I believe in Maslow and the internal motivation of needs, and I do think that people like to look good. So hunting mistakes doesn't help them in their career, really. So you're not looked at as being helpful. But helping people be successful and learn and contribute, because you chose to be a joiner or a nurse or a plumber or an accountant, whatever it is. And if I can help you with that purpose, then you're going to be more successful in the organization, right? And it's finding out what that little bit can be in each given situation. But you're right.
Of course. And at the Resi group, do you find a lot of friction maybe when you're trying to be as helpful as possible? Are people generally quite open to you and your team coming in and maybe picking stuff apart?
Um, so, I've been here 4 years, and the first day that you show up, you're a stereotype, right? So,
Mm.
whatever you have in your head about what safety represents is what that individual represents until you get to know them. So, friction, yeah, and I think it goes back to that helpfulness. I've had conversations with senior people who tell me, you safety guys hide behind columns, take photographs to embarrass people, and so I had to overcome those kind of things to make a difference. But friction comes in many different ways, and back to the what works and what doesn't work. I don't talk about safety first because the finance guy would have an argument with you, and it's the wrong conversation, right? HR would have an argument with you, right? Everybody believes that their purpose is the most important one because that's why they came to work today. So what you've got to do is understand what's fair and reasonable in terms of what the organization is trying to achieve. So we're here to build a transmission tower over a bank. We're here to build a substation. We're here to manufacture a part. We're here to put dinner on people's plates. So if you can put safety in that context in a way that's fair, then you get rid of a lot of that friction. And I think the other part of it is that when you start using the purpose of the organization and the values of the organization, and you can make those values live in the decisions, right? Ours are trust and professionalism and expertise and so on. So if you can use those, it kind of grounds the conversation in common ground and what we're talking about. So it's, words are really important, purpose is really important, and just making sure that you're aligning what you do with what they do on shared ground and shared purpose, I think helps to overcome friction.
What are your personal values, maybe both in and outside of work? And, do you use them as part of your job when you mentioned values about the corporate values there?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? I think, human principles and human values are really, really, really important. And actually, I've had a long conversation with somebody about those things. I mentioned helpfulness. I don't know if that's a value or a behavior, but it's at the core of what it is that I try and do. And I think helpfulness, being helpful, gets you to truthfulness. Right? And when you get to the truth, you actually know what it is that you need to be working on. And the more truthful you are, that greater sense of belonging. Back to Maslow and so on and so forth. And where you've got that sense of belonging and the truthfulness and open conversations, that's when you get to learning. So I would, in close to 30 years worth of time in safety, I've never ever stopped for a minute trying to understand and trying to learn. So I think, helpfulness, truthfulness, creating a sense of belonging, both for myself and others, to something bigger than you, which is the throwaway line, constant learning. It's just, I find that I can provide more help the more that I learn. And I think your career as an individual is limited only by your desire to self-develop. And I think that's important for anyone.
Absolutely. I mean, you touched on lifelong learning there. That's something we're very passionate about, Health and Safety Network. Something Paul's very passionate about. Elliot, myself, of course. I'm young in my career. I know I've still got so much to learn. It's so great to hear someone senior such as yourself, knowing it's not just a case of you leave university or you leave a degree and say, right, okay, that's my learning done. You've got to incorporate it all as you're progressing through your career.
And just to add to that, the roles that you're given, if you're lucky, is, and I I'll take luck any day. But the roles that you're given are actually an opportunity to help other people learn. And I've found over time there's things that that you come across and you think, I've seen this before. I'm just going to tell everybody what the answer is. But that's denying people a learning opportunity. And way back to the kind of services you provide as HSE, if you are more of a coach, then people have to think things through for themselves. You can guide and point and things like that. Have you thought about this, or you look at that? But if individuals think things through for themselves, then you can, learning by definition is being able to grasp a concept and put it in your own words, in your own context, not regurgitate what somebody wrote on the blackboard. So it's a real important part of being given a senior leadership, if I dare say, position, to create learning for other people, because that's how you grow experience and knowledge.
You get economies of scale as well with it, don't you? If someone at the employee level takes on what they've learned from you, it could maybe potentially save lives in the future, and just mean that they are performing safer.
Yeah, but that's when you look back over the history of the profession, it sort of reinvents itself every 10 years or so. I read an article somewhere. It takes about 14 years for an idea to be taken up on and kind of mainstream. And when you think about significant pieces of legislation from a UK perspective, 1974, 1992, those kind of things, it takes sort of 10 years for us to say, right, okay, we've stabilized that works. What comes next? And you get some pioneers out there thinking about some new ideas, and people at first regurgitate, then practice, and after the practice becomes, okay, I get it now. So it does take a long time for things to come mainstream, but you can see the chunks of learning as time goes on. So, people like me and the heading towards the end of their career, I said that out loud, didn't I? Heading towards the end of your career, right? You're right. You got to be able to share what you've learned in a way that people can take it on board and practice it for themselves, because that they are now the future of everybody else. So it's really important that you chat about, I tried this and it didn't work, but if you think about going in this direction, let's see where we go with that. You can avoid a lot of the mistakes of the past.
Of course.
Potentially.
I don't want to touch too much on COVID, but what would you say is the one area of learning that you want the industry to take out of it?
I think that I'll tell you what we did here in Saudi Arabia, and it's transferable anywhere. What we did here, it's 30 companies, and we're kind of, well, I'll say the companies operate independently of each other whilst I have a group role. There's not a platform where we interacted and shared, the synergies that we potentially could have with standalone business. But in COVID, we all had the same problem, and nobody had any answers to the same problem, right? So, this time last year, a little bit before, I suppose, I got all of the general managers in the C-suite together. We were on a call 3 times a week. And some of us were Googling stuff, and some of us were researching stuff. Some of us were phoning aunts, uncles, and brothers that were in the medical profession and say, what do we have to do? And what we committed to as a group of people was going forward with our best idea. And we heard people saying, I've got this problem. And sometimes somebody would say, well, have you tried this? And somebody would say, I've tried this and this works, and I've tried this and this hasn't worked. But what happened through it all is that we started listening to the human beings that were on the other side of the fence, right? And individuals that at one point you saw as a financial opportunity were now a knowledge or a solution opportunity to keep your business going.
Yeah.
And what I think we developed, there's a term called resilience, and lots of people can debate what that means to you. But I think that what we developed was more resilience, because that for us was, how do you deal with an issue when you're in so much uncertainty? And the answer was, get together, put stuff on the table, we'll go forward with our best idea, and then we'll regroup and see if it worked or not. And then if it didn't, we'll change. And if it did, well, great, we'll cement it, we'll learn, and then we'll move on to the next challenge. So I think that in my view, especially in times of crisis, if you really put a team of people together, what happens out the other side of that is stronger, better relationships, because you know each other more, and you have, back to what I said at the beginning, you helped each other. And that's really important.
Yeah, it all links together. I'd like to maybe pivot slightly. You mentioned, we've covered it a bit already, to be fair. You mentioned on your LinkedIn profile, you're really passionate about emotional intelligence. It's something I'm sort of interested as well. I know I read both Daniel Goleman's books last year, I believe, on emotional intelligence, working with emotional intelligence. How important is emotional intelligence in health and safety?
Yeah, I think I probably have to go and have a look and see what I've said on my LinkedIn page, because I wrote that a long time ago. I think emotional intelligence is an aspect, and I would probably choose to broaden it out now and talk about trust and talk about relationships, and perhaps social power and things like that. Like I said earlier on, I have a job title, and when I walk into a room, sometimes people see a job title and not a person. And you've got to be very, very, very cognizant of that when you sit down and have a cup of coffee with somebody. And I think, I'll go back to that help thing. When you talk to somebody and they give you information, they're looking at you and saying, is this person going to help me with this information, or going to harm me with this information? And the more empathy that you have with individuals, the more likely you are to develop rapport and to develop trust. And I think what's really important for me is, I'll talk about power in an organization, right? And again, I'm over-egging this a little bit, and I'm pretty uncomfortable with these terms, but I believe that powerful individuals in an organization have been given that power as a privilege. And it's your job to listen to the plight of other people so that you can understand how your decisions affect their livelihoods, affect their lives, affect their safety, affect their working conditions, and so on and so forth. So if you can't empathize with people, if you can't go and talk to them, when they tell you something, you don't know their backgrounds, you don't know the experience, you don't know the reasons for the way they behave in a particular sort of set of circumstances. When you walk into a shop floor or a construction site or a kitchen or a garage or whatever it is your workplace is, there's lots of reasons why you see what it is that you see, but you have to suspend judgment and listen to individual stories. And then you've got to take back what information you take back and take that to the C-suite if you're there, or take it to your senior managers if that's your position, or your manager, whatever it is, and say, we've made decisions that create these circumstances. We need to make better decisions to create better circumstances for these individuals. And I don't know if I'm particularly explaining the concept of emotional intelligence, but what I am saying is that I've discovered that emphasis on process doesn't get you to the same place as empathy with people. And truth's important, and help's important, and you don't get that unless you get somebody else's story.
100%. And yeah, you're clearly very passionate about this, Andy. I can see that just from the way you talk and the way I've articulated that area. How do you find maybe the managers sometimes don't have that level of focus on empathy with their employees?
I think this is a continuum, right? Every single individual is every single individual, and again, your background, your history, and your upbringing is what it is. And we, back to emotional intelligence a little bit. We are emotional creatures, 100% emotional creatures, and sometimes I've seen managers respond in a particular way, actually because they're fearful. They're fearful of giving up power. They're fearful of embarrassing themselves if they don't show strength, and so on and so forth. And other managers are perhaps just a little bit like that. But yeah, I think, and again, this is where, as a safety person, if you believe that safety is an outcome, and you can't fix safety with safety, then you need to look at the way it is that we're running business. And the way that we run business, to be honest, is that, you know, that diverse perspectives and ideas and all the rest of it to come together. So if you help a manager understand that showing a bit of vulnerability and courage, to use those words, actually makes them more powerful, because we empathize with people when they ask us a question, right? A question is, you know, I'm not sure, what do you think? I don't have all the answers, what do you think? Or does anybody have any ideas that would help? You're inviting, again, people to say, this guy doesn't have all the answers, so I'm going to help, I'm going to contribute. And if you've got 5 people standing in front of you and they contribute, then you've got 5 more perspectives and 5 more viewpoints and 5 more bits of knowledge. So I've worked with a lot of managers that are pretty stony, if that translates, and we've helped little by little to get to a place where actually getting other people to open up just gives them, it's like, geez, I never even realized that was going on. Now that I know, I can deal with it. And now that you're dealing with it, people go back to, you know, we've all got fairness and social justice filters. And I think where you know, people open up and say, you know, well, no, he listens, right? He asks for my opinion, and when I gave the wrong one, we had a fair conversation. When I gave the right one, we followed my idea. It's great, right? So I think sometimes just cracking a couple of little people open a little bit, where they're a little bit stony, and when you go down that experience route for yourself and find out that it works, then you're likely to do it again and again, and the more you do it, as long as it keeps working and it's helpful, then you can build on that. I think the hard thing sometimes is the first step.
Absolutely. Really fantastic stuff there, Andy. You know, it's about having that open dialogue with people and maybe seeing the best in how people can grow. Want to maybe take a look at safety differently. It's got, you know, you've got some opinions on it. Could you give us maybe a brief overview of your view of maybe the safety differently philosophy, without wanting to endorse or discuss any particular bespoke methodologies?
Sure. I think I understand the origins of this, and I understand the intentions behind it, and I also understand the way that you couched the question there is intending to say, let's not get into a camp and start a divisive conversation, right? And it goes. There's first of all, I'll deal with the elephant in the room first. You know, there's a part of your brain that can't distinguish between a broken leg and damaged dignity. And you know, I believe that as human beings, we haven't evolved to the point where we can cope with the artificial world of business and the organization structure and so on and so forth. And what that part of the brain is working out is, if I have a broken leg, I'm not going to contribute to the tribe, and I might get left behind. And if the people in the tribe damage my dignity because what I represent, what I say, they don't believe it, then I might get left behind by the tribe, and I can't survive. I can't survive. We survive in groups of people. We're social creatures, and we rely on each other. So if you take that dignity thing, what that part of the brain does is, if you attack somebody's beliefs, you get a defense back. So people that have been successful doing a particular thing, if there's an attack on your beliefs, then you'll respond defensively. So my take on all of this is that this profession is absolutely huge, and safety is situational. I helped transform some of our performance because I had enough technical knowledge to know that an engineering process wasn't the right process. And I facilitated help from all over the place to come together, procurement and finance and in HR and so on, because we had skills issues, supply chain issues, and other departments that would never normally speak to each other came together to help each other out. So it's very much a technical based problem, but it was a social relationships, connection, joint problem solving. Let's call it a mini crisis, right? People come together, solve a problem. We all learned something from each other and we moved on. Mm. So I think what Safety 1, Safety 2, Safety 3, people are trying to categorize a moment in time and a moment in history. But sometimes you have to go back. You go all the way back to the 1974 Health and Safety Work Act for your UK audience. The principles are still all there. They're still all valid. What we're trying to do is interpret them into circumstances, and all of our experiences add and add and add. And sometimes you need a little bit of psychological safety. And sometimes you need to recognize that 95% of what you've done is a good thing. Let's not focus on the 5%. And sometimes you've got to go back and say, well, actually, we haven't done enough governance and audits in this particular area. So we've lost that corporate view of what's going on over there. But fundamentally, as a professional individual working in an organization, I think what's really important for you is to understand what you see as bringing benefit to your organization and what the organization sees as being a benefit. And together you discuss and you make a plan to say, well, tomorrow we're going to make it a little bit better. Let's keep gently pushing and let's make progress. Because some people are just trying to stop the workforce going out and buying nasty chemicals at the local shop. And some companies are trying to work out how to get the President's Excellence Award next time round. And there's a huge gulf in between those. So you got to meet where you are, and you can't get somebody in box 1 to go to box 5 tomorrow. Sometimes you got to go one. You might go quite quickly, but you've got to grow that experience and knowledge as a team of people, because otherwise you leave people behind.
Absolutely. I briefly scanned over a paper on safety differently from Professor Nancy Leveson, I believe. It looked at, I don't know if you've seen it, but it looked at, safety 3, and she was making the argument that we should revert back to a systems-based approach. Now, I think from what you said there, it's maybe just about having the intelligence to know what to use in which circumstance.
Yeah, I avoid initiatives. My previous organization, an initiative came up. We branded the safety program, and I watched people for a year debate what those two words meant, right? And I go along to meetings sometimes, and I've heard other people say it as well. If you put safety guys in the room and say, define the word safety, you can be there for an hour. Yeah. You can be there for 4 hours. Define, what is that, a hazard or is that a risk? Is severity, is that a 4 or is that a 3? And you've got to be very careful with, you end up talking about what the definition of the thing is, and you end up not taking the actions that are actually going to help people out. So I think it's very important for you to internalize your own knowledge and experience, and I think it's hugely important for people to listen to TED Talks, listen to podcasts like from the global HSE Network and others. And what every individual will do is find the bit that they think, I can see how I can make that work for me in my environment. And that's great. That's good for you. I am delighted for you. That's what I have done. I have chosen a path, and I've found that it works for me, but it won't work for somebody else, because it fits who I am and where I am in my personality and my learning cycle. And just to go all the way back to school days, when you're in your first, up to the age of 10 or 11, you just learn because you're told to. As you get into what you'd say in Scotland, secondary school, right? You do your first 2 years of broad-based everything. And then you pick your subjects, because now you're starting to be selective. And you pick the subjects that you like. And funnily enough, the things that you like you're actually better at. So, and then we decide I'm going to go into a university course. I'm going to go social sciences or art or engineering or STEM or whatever you want, but you're specializing, and then you learn a little bit more. So I think where you say safety 2, safety 3, right? You've got a whole world out there of different professions and different people and so on and so forth. And some parts of that are going to go, well, I can use that, but I don't quite get that. You can't argue that one thing's wrong and one thing's right, because it's situational for you, your business, and your profession.
It's funny you mentioned there about the need to really take actions. We were chatting to Paul yesterday in a meeting, and he was talking about how we really want the congresses to not just be about theory, even though that's important, stuff like safety differently, but also give people what they need to really take action and enact change in their organizations. Of course, that's got to be the ultimate goal, hasn't it?
I think that's fair, and it's I said this. I got first invited to talk in Abu Dhabi by your organisation, and Elliot interviewed me afterwards and said, what is it about this network? What do you think? And what I said is there's some huge divides in our organisation, in the profession around about the world, and there's a real opportunity for a network like this to come together and provide case studies and knowledge of things that you've done in your organisation that actually makes a difference. And I think where you debate the theory, you're sort of slightly in the area of I agree or I disagree with a particular theory. But where you've got an individual talking about a case study to say, in this area, I tried this out and it worked. Then if people can identify with elements of that case study, then they've got something that they can take away and do on a Tuesday, right? So I and that's why I really appreciate the support that I've had from you guys and Paul and Katie and Elliot to help me, because you guys help me. You make me think things through, because to explain it, I have to think about it. So and my gift back, if I can use that one, is that a fair word? My give back, that's a better word. My gift back is, I agree with you. If I can give you case studies that'll help people, then that's great, right? Because there's nothing more important than helping people be safe. Very noble profession, I think.
Absolutely, and it's something I've mentioned it on a podcast before. I've only been in not the safety publishing industry for maybe a year now. I had my own misconceptions about it before. They've been totally wiped away with speaking to people like yourself who are just passionate about keeping people safe at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I think our brain, I don't know if you've looked at neuroscience or anything like that. I've bounced along the top, right? I can't get further down because I'm not smart enough to understand it all. But what I do know is this: where you help somebody and you get a smile, there's an emotional response in you, right? And I think it's in our very nature to help people out. And back to your question earlier on about managers. There is a power thing going on with people, right? I'm a manager. I'm a powerful individual. I know best. I'm going to tell you what to do, and you get something out of that. But what I have seen in managers that perhaps go down that trade, when they get the help of their team because they help their team, they look happier, right? They just look happier, and they're more settled in themselves, right? So that I believe that you're actually more powerful when you give up power, if that makes any sense to you.
Totally.
But it's and I'm the same, right? When I get people saying to me that helped, I feel great, right? I feel great. So I don't think that I'm in this for anything other than selfish reasons, right?
Of course.
Well, that's not true, right?
You don't have to answer this question now, Andy, but I've heard rumours there may be a book on the horizon.
Wow. Do you know, it is funny, right? So I'm a guy doing a job, and I've turned up, and I'll get fired if I don't help work out how to get people safe, right? So I've through survival instincts tried to work out how to make it work for people. And I got invited to speak at a conference, which led to another one, which led to another one, right? And when I showed up, I was terrified and very, very nervous. But I found out I got something to say, and I met with Rosa Carrillo. I've only been using LinkedIn for a couple of years, right? And I found all of this knowledge out there, and I linked with Rosa, and she said, "I'm interested in your story." And I spoke to her, and she said, "You need to write a book." And then somebody else said, "You need to write a book," and somebody else said, "You need to write a book," and now it's got to you. So I guess it must be true.
Got to give the people what they want.
Yeah, I think what I'm really good at is when somebody asks me a question, I'll give you an answer. But if I was to sit down and write it, I just can't. So maybe I'll just get somebody to ask me lots of questions, and I'll dictate into a microphone, and then I'll see it. It'll just be a collection of safety stories from 30 years of experimentation and what I learned by accident. Pun intended.
Yeah. Well, I'd certainly be an avid listener, Andy, when they do come out. And thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's always great to talk to you.
Absolute pleasure. I really like talking about safety, and it's really nice to talk to somebody that's also interested. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks, Andy.
Stay safe.